Hello and welcome. So, you're a religious worker thinking about serving in the United States, or maybe you're with an organization that wants to sponsor someone. You've probably heard about the R-1 visa. It's the official pathway, but let's be honest, it can seem pretty complicated. Well, in this explainer, we are going to demystify it for you. We'll break it all down step by step so the whole journey makes sense. We've laid everything out like a simple roadmap. First, we'll cover the basics of what the R-1 visa actually is. Then, we'll get into the really important part. Do you qualify? After that, we'll walk through the application process itself, talk about what life is like once you get here, and wrap up by looking at some pretty big updates and what might be next. All right, let's dive right in. Before we start talking about all the rules and paperwork, let's just ask the most basic question. What is this visa all about, and who is it really for? Okay, at its heart, the R-1 is what's known as a non-immigrant visa, and the key word to remember here is temporary. It's designed specifically for people coming to the U.S. to do religious work for a set amount of time. It's not a direct path to permanent residency, though we will talk a little bit about that later on. Now, this next section is absolutely crucial. Think of it as a personal checklist. This is where you and your sponsoring organization will figure out if the R visa is even a possibility. So let's see what it takes. So before we even get into things like your job title or what kind of organization you'll be working for, there is one major requirement that's all about you, the individual applicant. It's a big one. And there it is, 2 years. You absolutely must have been a member of your specific religious denomination for at least 2 full years right before the paperwork is filed. This isn't flexible, it's a hard and fast rule. It's their way of making sure you have a real, established connection to the faith community. So who exactly can apply? Well, the work generally falls into 3 buckets. You've got ministers who are ordained or commissioned. Then you have people in a religious vocation, think nuns or monks. And finally, there are those in a religious occupation, which can include roles like cantors, missionaries, or religious counselors. And one more thing, this can't be a volunteer gig. You have to be working at least 20 hours a week on average. Now, what about the employer? The organization sponsoring you has to be a legitimate nonprofit based right here in the U.S. This could be a church, a mosque, a synagogue, you name it, or it could be a different type of nonprofit that's officially affiliated with a religious denomination. Okay, so let's say you've checked all the boxes. You qualify, and your employer qualifies. Fantastic. So, what happens next? Let's walk through the actual journey of applying. You know, the whole process can seem overwhelming, but you can really break it down into 4 main milestones. It all starts with your employer filing the main petition. Then you wait for USCIS to approve it. After that, it's your turn for the visa application and interview. And the final step, of course, is your entry into the United States. See? It feels a lot more manageable when you look at it this way. Right, step 1 is all about your U.S. employer. They're the ones who have to file Form I-129. And this isn't just a form, they have to back it up with a ton of evidence. We're talking about proof of your 2-year membership, the organization's tax-exempt letter from the IRS, a really detailed description of the job you'll be doing, proof that you're qualified for it, and the details of how you'll be paid. This packet of information is really the foundation for your entire case. Okay, so once that petition is approved by USCIS, the ball is in your court. It's time for the interview at a U.S. embassy or consulate. You'll need all the obvious stuff, your passport, that approval notice, it's called an I-797, your application confirmation, and so on. But I want you to look at that last bullet point, evidence of ties to your home country. This is so important. Why? Because the R-1 is a temporary visa. You have to convince the officer that you have strong reasons to go back home when you're done. Things like family, property, a community you're part of. It proves your intent to leave when the visa expires. So you did it. Your visa was approved. You've landed in the U.S. Congratulations. But what happens now? Let's talk about what your actual life here will look like, from how long you can stay to what it means for your family. Your time in the U.S. on an R-1 visa is really clearly mapped out. You'll first be admitted for up to 30 months. After that, you can apply for an extension for another 30 months. You add that up, and you get a total maximum stay of 5 years. And once your job ends, you get a little breathing room, a grace period of up to 60 days to pack up, depart, or maybe look into changing your status. A lot of you are probably hoping to bring your families, and you can. Your spouse and any unmarried children under 21 can join you on what's called an R2 visa. But this is a critical distinction you need to understand. As the R1 holder, you can work for your sponsor. Your R2 family members, however, cannot work at all. They can go to school, sure, but their legal status in the US is completely tied to yours. Okay, let's fast forward a bit and look to the future. Immigration rules are always evolving, and there's a really big update coming for R1 visa holders that you need to know about. Plus, we'll see how the R1 stacks up against other options. Now, listen closely because this is a big deal. For a long, long time, there's been this one rule that's been a real pain for R1 workers when they reach the end of their stay. Well, as of January 2026, that rule is going away. So what does this actually mean? The old rule said that after you finished your 5 years, you had to physically live outside the US for a full year before you could even apply for another R1 visa. As of 2026, that 1-year wait is gone. Now, you still have to leave after the 5 years is up, but you can apply for a new R1 visa much, much sooner. It's a game changer. So how does the R1 compare to other visas? Well, it's pretty specialized. A J1 exchange visa can sometimes cover religious programs, and sometimes a spouse can work. A regular B1 or B2 tourist visa is only for very short, unpaid religious activities, like attending a conference. For any kind of long-term paid religious work, the R1 is really the main option. And the big question, what about staying for good? While the R1 visa itself is temporary, it often acts as a bridge. A lot of religious workers eventually apply to transition to an EB4 green card. Now, that is a completely separate, much more involved process, but it's a very common and well-established path. So, there you have it. We've just walked through the entire R1 journey, from that first question of, do I qualify, all the way to planning for the future. Now that you've seen the whole map laid out, what's your next step? If you only take away a few things from our chat today, let it be these. First, that 2-year membership rule is non-negotiable. Second, your employer has to come with lots of detailed proof. Third, keep that 5-year maximum stay in mind. Fourth, don't forget that big 2026 update. And finally, please remember, this is a guide to help you understand the basics. And that brings us to our last and most important piece of advice. Immigration law is incredibly complicated, and it changes. For a life decision this big, especially if your situation is a little unusual, or if you're serious about pursuing a green card, talking to an experienced immigration attorney isn't just a good idea, it's absolutely essential.